Welcome back to the Global Indian Podcast, home to the greatest conversations and the official platform for open and liberal minds. Because yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Now, as you know, every single week we plunge ourselves into the human experience behind our perceptions of identity, take a second look at the countries we now call home, and tackle the big conversations. But only a few days ago, Sunday, in fact, a bomb tore across Istanbul. It killed a young child, a 9-year-old lady with her father, a teenager and her mother, and a young married couple. Monday morning, Turkey is back to normal. People are back in the streets. A woman's been arrested and over 46 others have joined her. And so now it opens up a deeper discussion piece, especially in a country that has strong ties with India and where you have a larger Indian community now calling itself home. Say, well, what does it now mean to be Turkish, especially in the back of these horrific incidences? To help me understand the situation on the ground, I'm joined by a dear friend of mine, a person who also listens into the show, Serbo. Interestingly, I met Serbo in Turkey only a few years ago, very close to where this incident took place. So without further ado, Serbo, welcome to the show. Now you're on the other side of the microphone today.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Happy to be here.
Serbo,
Hope I can be, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it's such interesting times for you because I know we've been going back and forth talking about it. What's it like to be you at this moment in time?
You know what? When I think about this, this is what usually happens. And it's sad that I can form a sentence that starts with, this is what usually happens, underlining the usually, because this is nothing new. This has been going on in this geography for way too long to bear. And I'm a 48-year-old guy, and I've almost lived all my sane life, so to speak, omitting the times that I was a little kid, with incidents like this, minor or major. And like you said, let's look at the situation like this. This is a story on a Sunday on Istiklal, which is, if you've ever been to, I know you have, and I know you've walked there, but if anybody who's listening has ever been to Istanbul, is a place that they'll go on a Sunday. And we have 6 people who died, like you said, a young kid, father, another young kid, mother, and a young couple. And this could happen to anybody. The tragic thing is, this is not even a big incident. When you think about the history of the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years, we've had I don't know what the adjective is, but so big incidents that this is like, okay, I'll try to put it this way. When you live in situations like this, I think the basic human reflex goes in, did someone I know, did someone I love, did any acquaintance of mine has, suffered from this? That's your first reaction. And I think it's a very human reaction. It's also a sad reaction because you kind of feel content when the answer is no to this question. Then you dig in and try to understand the stories of those who have suffered from this. And not only those who died there or got wounded there, but about their families. And that's when it kicks in. That's when you feel hurt, etc. But then at one point, you look at the situation from a larger perspective and say, okay, 6 people have died. That's not so bad. Now, this, I think, is the worst thing a human mind can create out of a situation like this. And that's what we do, because we're unfortunately, very unfortunately, accustomed to this. It's just, it brings other fears. It brings in the fears. Like in 2016 was, I think, the worst, I don't think it was the worst year in terms of the number of fatalities. And we had somewhere in between 7 to 9 incidents where a total of 290 people died, almost, minus 1 or 2. So and these were not in one city. This was everywhere around Turkey. It was in Istanbul. It was in Ankara. It was in Gaziantep. It was all around the place. Little incidents, big incidents, but 290 people died. 290 stories, and not only 290 stories, the stories of those who were close to those 290 people. If they didn't even die, they still the stories were not the same. Because on a personal perspective, I think we're all stories. You're a story, I'm a story, and the great thing about life is that we have touching stories, and we create new stories every time we touch another story. And here, we lost too much. I know the question was not that. I know the question was something like, okay, you lived through this. What do you do the next morning? A couple of things happen. It depends on the person. A lot of the people just get scared of being in crowds, just scared of taking the public transportation, going to shopping malls, going where there's a lot of people, because unfortunately we know that whenever there's an act of terror, it doesn't happen in like a street where only 3 people walk. It happens in crowded places. That is the idea of terror, to create that fear. So some people do that, and they try to avoid it as much as possible, but you can't, because you're living and you have a job to do, or you have a kid you have to take to school, or the kid has to go to school. So life has to reproduce in that manner every single day. And for example, in the company that I work for, one of the banks that we work with, the bank branch, is just in front of the bomb scene in Istiklal Street. And I called the branch manager and said, how are you feeling? And they're like a little petrified. But on another angle, they look at it as, this has happened, and we were not here because it was a Sunday, and so none of us got hurt. Very unlikely that's going to happen again right here. So now we're kind of safe. These are like the human solutions you find to a problem that you can't really solve. You know what I mean? You try to find some sort of good in it to continue your life with it. But it is, at the end of the day, it's just, like I said at the beginning, you think about those. I'm a father. I know you're a father. And we have 2 young girls, one 9, one 15, died there. One with her dad, one with her mother. And now you have a mother and a father out there who's just, I don't know what they're feeling. And it's just, and they probably are not going to even have a decent funeral ceremony because of I don't want to get really graphic here, but because of the way the bodies are. And I can't see anything that's more tragic than a mother or a father going to a graveyard to bury their kids. And that's sad enough in itself. But what's sadder is the way that those kids are going to go to the grave. And I think that's what it is with terror. It doesn't differentiate between anything. I mean, thinking about who've been killed, especially in 2016, there was an incident at Vodafone Park at a football stadium where most of the kids that died were young cops. There's another incident where it was a wedding, and people who attended that wedding, 57 or something like that. Like, the numbers don't really mean anything. It just shows how big this situation is. But when you think about incidents like this, one is too much. One is just too much. And now we have quantities of ones here. And so that was a wedding. There's a football stadium. There's a nightclub at the end of the year in 2016 where, and there was one in the Blue Mosque area, and the one that happened in the Blue Mosque area and the one that happened in the nightclub, most of the people that died were not Turks, they were tourists, either to have fun going to that nightclub or visiting the Blue Mosque area because it is the place to visit. And the others, like I said, were cops, or they were just people attending a wedding. So you know what I mean? That's how differentiated the thing is. It is, and it could happen to anybody. When we chatted last night and said, you told me you wanted to do this, I thought about it, and I thought about what it is to be human, and I thought about this. Most evolutionary biologists talk about the human notion of fear and how much that pertains to evolution, how much it helps evolution. When we fear stuff, we try to back off and we try to guarantee ourselves, and etc. This is one of the essences of that make us human, and that makes us not better, but different in a way than all the other creatures that we share the world with. That's what made us progress, if progress is a good thing, but that's what made us progress. That's the notion that because we feared, because we wanted to feel secure, because we wanted to do something different, we're able to do this chat right now. You know what I mean? That's technology. But there's something else that is very human, and that's to dream. That's to try to make everything better, try to think about possibilities where we can do things differently. And that's also one of the reasons that we can have this chat right now with this technology. And what I thought about was this yesterday. Because we have this great notion of hope and dream, we play lottery. And I don't want to dig into too many numbers, but winning a lottery is around, I don't know, 1 in 14 million, something like that. But we believe it can happen to us. Now I'm going to turn the numbers around. I just looked at how many people have died in bombing incidents in Turkey in the last 25 years. So the likelihood of you getting killed is around 1 in 150,000. So your likelihood of getting killed in a bombing incident in Turkey is way too bigger than you winning the lottery. Getting wounded is around 1 in 25,000. So when you look at numbers like that, I know we're talking about the human side of it, but that's what I could only think of. I just looked at numbers and I said, I believe I can win the lottery. I play the lottery every now and then because I believe something good can happen, that I can do something good with the money I make. But the likelihood of me getting killed in a bomb is bigger, way too bigger than me winning the lottery. And when you realize that, it is a serious hit you take. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So being the human we are, now I have that fear. I have always had this fear. Not for myself, by the way. That's a personal thing, but I can die. I know all of us are going to die.
We almost feel immune, don't we, as fathers, I think, because you think if a bullet was shot, somehow we'd defend it off our chest, it would be ricocheted. But we feel it, that death isn't the issue, but for our loved ones, that's where we feel it. You know, walking through the streets, you know, our daughters, it could have been them going through the streets at that moment in time. It could have been our partners. And I think that's the thing that plays up in your mind. It's interesting that you say that. It's that human need, that lubricant that we need just to justify certain actions, just to almost dream that actually, no, this can't happen to me, or this may happen to me if it's something positive. When you woke up, obviously on Monday, you did your thing, you did the normal human ritual. Sunday, checked in with everyone. Is everyone fine? I did the same thing with you. You know, the first person that messaged was, hey, Serbo, how are you? How are the family? Monday morning comes. Now we're on Tuesday. What's it like? Do we just kind of tend to forget then? Does it just fizzle through? What's happening psychologically?
That is exactly what happens. I think it's also a very human nature that when we deal with trauma, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert in anything, but when you deal with stuff like this, one of the actions the human mind does is usually forget. There are parts in our own personal history that we can't really remember well, and that's probably because it has some kind of trauma attached to it. Sometimes we remember more because of the trauma, but in other instances, we usually forget, especially if it is something that's kind of traumatic, but it happened to someone else. So I might not forget the day, on a personal level, I will never forget the day my sister died. That's a different story. But just as an example, if it was your sister that died, I'd probably forget that day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the kind of attitude the human brain, I think, has to situations like this. And again, being human is being adaptive. So you adapt to the whatever that comes new. That's the only way to live. So what happens on Sunday? You, like you said, you feel sad. You check out on every friend you have, especially ones that could be around that area. I know I'm not always there. My mother knows I'm not always there. My aunt knows I'm not always there, but they call me just to check in to see it, and then they feel comfortable because I'm the person who should not be there. But once you're over that phase, and the next day you start working, remembering that is not going to help you. On the contrary, you have to, in a way, forget about all this to live. Like we've talked about previously, in 2016, I don't even remember the number of incidents, as you may recall a couple of minutes ago. I said 7 to 9 incidents. Think about it. There are incidents where around 300, almost 300 people died because of bombs. And you tend to forget some of them. You have to you have to Google it to realize, oh yeah, and there was also that incident. You know what I mean? This is not this. If your brain does this to you, it is a strong commitment that it wants to forget. It wants to pretend like it never happened because it wants to live like things like this would never happen again. You don't want to. Can you have fear? Yes, but you want to live like that. Those possibilities do not exist. And to do that, you need to forget the realities so that you can think that the possibilities are not there for you or for anybody that you love or anybody in general, actually. Because at the end, when something happens somewhere around here, it affects me. I know the situation. I see the place. I see, maybe not only on TV, but I see the place. I go there at someday, not maybe that day, but there. And then I remember that there are people who have been massacred there in a way. So it's
the location becomes an anchor, but it's interesting because it's saying, well, what does it serve? How does it benefit us? And there has to be a benefit, because ultimately in the human psyche, this whole idea of evolution, what are we evolving to? And how do we utilize these stems of psychology, in what for better word, to actually benefit us and build a better society? Like on the other note, if we take a slight angle off, now, lady was arrested. And 43 other people were arrested in Turkey. Last time this happened in 2016, we saw this movement then towards the right. Now there's a lot of fears because you have elections coming up next year. What does this do for the sense of Turkish identity? What does it now mean to be Turkish? You've had these instances that are played up. And as you rightly said, I'm looking at this not from a political point of view, but more on a psychological point of view. How does this unfold in people's mindset?
I think this is a shortcut, really, that again analysts, etc., tend to use when things like this happen. It turns a shift to the far right. Well, I'm not sure about that, and I'm not sure if it did it happen previously. It did. Will it happen again? You can't bet on it because it's not like a 1+1=2 formula. That doesn't every one of us, at the end of this, it's going to depend on what's going to happen next. Nothing may happen next. So that this incident will just be a tragic incident that some people will remember in every day of their lives, and most of us will forget until it comes up again in a whatever fashion it will. So I don't think the problem here, and for your question, what does it mean to be Turkish right now, is quite different than what it was in 2016. The reason being, this vast, huge numbers of immigration that has happened to this country. Syrians, Afghans, a lot of nations, and a lot of immigrants that try to use Turkey as a transit point to Europe. But it is not only about that. These are huge lumps of people that we're talking about, but there's also another lump that's coming into Turkey, and that's money. And money from Iran, China. These people are coming here and they're investing in houses, apartments, etc., real estate mostly. So, okay, it's not about being Turkish, but it's about being Turkish in Istanbul, the thing that I'm going to talk about right now. And also, by the way, Russians, Ukrainian as well. So it is a hub of people right now that trying to go somewhere else or just stay here. But what has happened is with so many people coming in, the real estate prices soared, tripled, quadrupled to rent or to buy, whatever, it doesn't matter. Because there's this whole supply of humans or big demand from humans and relatively low supply of real estate. So what it has become being Turkish in Istanbul is, this is not for me because I'm the son of an immigrant myself, and I think I have an ethical standpoint to whatever immigration it is in this world. I'm with those guys. I know people don't move around because it's fun. Nobody would leave their houses if it was better there. It's always that it's that lottery mentality. Something will get better if I move and take all this load on my shoulders. I can make this life better kind of idea that makes people move. But the people over here that were here from the starting point, they see the population increase, they see the prices increase, they see real estate being hard to find. So they get in a lot of the people get in a survival mode as well. And then it is, of course, easy to blame a couple of things. You can either blame the government because they allowed this to happen in a way. I'm not blaming, I'm just saying. Or you can blame the immigrants or the other people who came here because it was better when you guys were not out. Now, from a terror kind of, what happened with this incident was, and also with what happened with most of the incidents in 2016 as well. These were not, this is not a nice word to use, but these were not homegrown terrorists mostly. They were imported. They came, one of them was from Central Asia, one of them was from Syria, so it's a different story. It's not, and not that it matters, by the way. Not that it matters, not that who that what, it's the who part or their identity matters. But from this point, when you think about it, you look at it and you say, okay, we have these borders where like everybody can come in, and there's so many, by the way, there's so many of them, it's easy to hide yourself among them as well. So when you look at a street and you see 100 immigrants, 99 of them could be the most decent guys on earth, just trying to make a living, trying to survive. But that one guy or woman could be the terrorist. But what are you going to do about it? Well, you're going to, waste the whole 100, or just try to find out. How are you going to find that one? That's how that woman that did this incident, that terrorist that did this incident, she was working in a textile, not a factory, but a little, workshop. So she was working, she was there. It was so easy to camouflage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I think for most part in this country, especially in Istanbul and in other cities as well, but in Istanbul more predominantly, being Turkish has this question of really, okay, what's happening to this country? Why are so many people here? Why is everything messed up in this way, in terms of jobs, in terms of real estate, in terms of everything? And who are these people? Are these people here to hurt us? Or should we hurt them? Should we kick them out? Why are we keeping all these people? The war in Syria is, relatively, shouldn't they go back to their country? Questions like this. So I'm not the person who has the right to talk about being Turkish, because it's such a big, word. Being something is, and you can't speak for everybody. You can speak on your own behalf. And I'm trying to put myself away from it because I look at it from a different angle. And to me, the answer is you always become something, that nationhood that comes up mostly in times of tragedy. So when there's an earthquake, that's when you become a nation. You remember that you're part of something
Is a need to
bigger.
belong,
When it's a
isn't it?
and that happens mostly in tragedies. And unfortunately, very tragically, that happens a lot in Turkey.
Yeah.
Terror, earthquakes, whatever. You know, there's a mining accident that happened, I think, a month ago, where they're like, uh, perhaps 50, 60 miners died. So that in instances like this, you remember that it's like we have this, not fate, but it looks like a fate that we're bound to tragedy in this geography. And that's what we have to deal with.
It's like
And it is
almost
sad.
is almost a coping mechanism that you revert to that sense of belonging, that there's other people that are going through this at the same time. And because we all feel the same way, I can then justify these emotions. I can then hold on to it almost like a mythical beast. And then that way, unitedly, hopefully we'll find a solution, we'll find solace in each other. But as you said, it's temporary, isn't it? Because it happens and we feel it and we're together, we're unison, and we can feel these emotions. And it's not an emotion of hatred. I think hatred comes up afterwards. It's an emotion of, we're here, and you're stopped and you're just shocked and you're in that, you're frozen statement. And then what happens gradually, you start to unfreeze. And as you start to thaw out, it's saying, well, the easiest part for me to do is just acknowledge it happened, but just continue, keep moving, keep having that experience. And that's where we are. Yeah.
Rajan, exactly. This is what happens. The difference, I think, in being Turkish, and maybe, I don't know, in other parts of the world as well, perhaps being Palestinian is even worse. And then I'm not saying this is the worst country that this happens, but I know there are other places in the world that has more tragedy, etc. But and if you talk to people over there, they'll probably say the same thing. Because of the frequency it happens, the time span that it takes you from freezing to getting back in life again gets shorter and shorter and shorter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it happens a lot. So if this happened somewhere which is never known to have this kind of incidents, they would probably be shocked and could not get back to life for a couple of weeks. Maybe they would be thinking about it all the time, all the time, all the time. But over here, it has happened so many times before that you get thawed real fast and you're back in life the day after. And I wish it wasn't like that. I just wish it wasn't like that, but that is how it is.
So, I think it's been fantastic having you on this morning. I know it's early on your side as well. There's never an easy way to take on these discussions, but I like the fact that it's always had and it's done without fear or favor. And it's having, again, looking at the human experience behind this. I know you're an author. I know that you've written some incredible books as well. I got a feeling that there's a book there somewhere having a look at this, because you've always delved into these. And I know every time we talk, it goes down these rabbit holes where it always comes into, well, what does that mean? How does that feel? How do we make sense of that? What does that feel, not to a nation, but what does it feel to an individual at that moment in time? For yours, that medium has been music. For example, the soundtracks in which define who we are, the way that technology has been used. And I think because you've been able to do that, especially within your profession, it allows you to have a deeper insight than most in some of the most complex parts, because you have the ability to step away and then look into it with almost a new set of eyes that has these multi-visions. That was my Jerry Springer moment there. Server, thank you very much.
I can't take this much of a compliment, Rajan. I know for a fact that I'm just a guy who's trying to survive all this madness, and that's just I don't know. I know everything you said was very too nice about me. I wish I was that, but I'm not that. I just have to be honest and come clean about that as well.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
I think sometimes it's always hard to take a compliment, isn't it? It's but Seba, thank you very much for coming on. I do really appreciate
Thank
it.
you, man. Thank you,
You're
Rajan.
welcome.
Thank you very much.